Welcome to Motherhood Aligned and Assigned, where we help guide mothers from symptoms to solutions.
We're Dr. Serena Coffman and Dr. Veronica Schiltz, nervous system specialists helping families discover the missing link in their wellness journey.
Join us as we translate complex health challenges into simple, actionable solutions for you and your children.
Because your family deserves to thrive,
not just survive. Preeclampsia has increased 25% over the last 2 decades, and no, this is not random.
There are several factors, but today we want to talk about something that most people aren't discussing, and that's the nervous system's role in preeclampsia. And let's just paint another image here. We like doing that. Right? So think of your nervous system. We like car analogies here. We don't know anything about cars, but this is what we use all the time. So your nervous system is like a car with 2 pedals, right? We have the gas pedal. That's your sympathetic system. It revs you up for stress. We want that, right? That's not a bad thing all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And we have the brake pedal, your parasympathetic nervous system, and it's slowing things down for growth and regulation and healing. And in pregnancy, you need the brake pedal to be working, right? You cannot be stuck on the gas, especially in pregnancy, because there's so much going on, right? Your body needs to adapt in massive ways. Your blood volume increases 30 to 50%. This is asking your heart to work harder because you're pumping blood for not only yourself, but for a baby and more blood. And blood vessels need to expand and soften to accommodate this increased blood volume. And these changes aren't going to happen very well if you're stuck in fight or flight, right? If you're stuck on the gas pedal, right? They can only happen when the nervous system feels safe, right? Because growing a baby requires adaptability in so many ways, right? Not just your emotional adaptability or your physical belly, adapting to that moving, but your metabolic system, your cardiovascular system, which is primarily what we're talking about today, have to be adaptable to grow a baby. And that happens when you can access your brake pedal.
Yeah, so this is actually more of a talk about dysautonomia. I'm clicking the docs together when as we're talking, because I was just talking to Dr. Strand. I'm I don't know what my opinions are about preeclampsia, other than I know that less stress would help. Yeah. Not less stored and stuck stress would help. Reduce that, right? Yeah. And so we talk about, I just said a big word, dysautonomia, but essentially what dysautonomia is a fancy way of saying is dysfunction of your systems, right? And so we know that, I was just talking to a patient about this today, actually. We know that every day, we know that the nervous system is a system, right? It's in the name. It operates as a system, and it's the one that's kind of helping everything else out, right? But when we have dysfunction in the nervous system long enough, it starts to affect other systems, and that's what dysautonomia comes into play, because now it's not just dysfunction in one system, it's dysfunction in multiple systems because of the compensation patterns that are happening and taking place, right? So when chronic stress keeps the nervous system stuck on the gas pedal, blood vessels stay constricted. That is literally what dysautonomia is. It's not that it started in the blood vessels. It's that it started in the nervous system. The nervous system was then not able to adapt to that stress. That stress leaked into the blood vessels, keeping them constricted. And then things like stress hormones. So cortisol is pushed out, right? Because again, using this analogy this morning, you currently just say the same things over and over. But it's literally the brain has this red button that pushes cortisol out, right? And it's we need cortisol. We need cortisol. Well, when we're stuck in a state of stress, it just keeps that finger on the button, and it's just I'm just not going to take it off because I just need a lot of it, so we're just going to keep pumping it out, right? So stress hormones stay elevated. Then we don't have adaptation because that now the brain is just only focused on very specific survival instincts, and that's when we start seeing conditions like preeclampsia emerge within pregnancy. I've seen this play out. I don't know that I've ever met someone who got preeclampsia who wasn't in some sort of stressed out, stuck in a stress storm, right? So research shows maternal stress can increase the risk of preeclampsia up to 20 times. And so this isn't about blame or being man, you should just calm down, right? It's about understanding the why so that we can support the body better.
Yeah. In my last pregnancy, I had midwives, and I asked them, I was what? Because they're always asking you about possible symptoms of preeclampsia, right? Because you can keep an eye out for it. So does it get to the full-blown, really dangerous kind? And I asked them, why do you think preeclampsia happens? They're like, what could I do to maybe prevent it from happening? And they're like, nothing. Like, we don't really, like, it's just like, it's random, and it's like a hormone cascade that can just happen to anyone. She's like, we just had a woman in, like, at the time, like, we just had a woman in who was perfectly fine last week, and then this week she had to get induced because she, like, overnight went into, like, a preeclampsia state. It's like, let me get some scans on that, mama.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
What's going on underneath of the surface?
It's like, it is a hormone cascade, but I don't think it's as random as we would think. I think if we ask the right questions of how is your nervous system doing, how are those automatic functions going, it wouldn't feel random, right? And so, one, I'm not going to stress if I got pregnant again about randomly getting preeclampsia, because I know that I can control, to a certain extent, I can control the level of stress that's being compounded on my nervous system. By removing that stress via chiropractic care is one really, really great way to remove that compounding stress, right? Like Dr. Veronica said, it's not about blame. So I'm not saying, oh, it's not random, and so you did something wrong. It's like, no, it's not random, and it's really hard to unwind compounded stress by yourself, right? You can't think your way out of a subluxation pattern, right? I was talking to a cognitive therapist, and she works with people with ADHD and anxiety and those things, and she's like, no, you can't cognitive therapy your way out of fight or flight. It's like, you're right. You're right. We should get coffee.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah, the body is designed to adapt. So let's help your body adapt to the stressors in your life, and then unwind that tension from past stressors, right? So that you can continue to adapt to a growing baby and everything that asks of your body.
And can I add, I mean, it's kind of like a little bit of a tangent, but like being in that, I literally would call myself a mindset coach, and I've been in the wellness space for a long, long time where people are like, oh, I don't know that I agree with that. So if you're listening to Dr. Serena say, like, you can't cognitively think your way out of fight and flight, I think what I want to add in here is that there is a level of subconscious that you cannot tap into, right? That's why it's called the subconscious, right? And you can get to a very mindful state, but there's always going to be these like blinders that you just don't know about, and it takes chiropractic care to come in and rewire some of it. And you can always expand, like that's why we're always on this journey. There's no one in the entire world that's going to be like, I have every part of my journey healed, right? Like I am a bucket of perfection and I finally did it, right? That's why it's called a journey, because we're always on it. And so if you are someone who is like, no, like I feel calmer when I'm doing my breathing, and I feel calmer when I'm doing my mindset, and that's true. You can, kind of like in our last episode, you can get yourself in a state of balance and of order to function. But if you have to do 17 breaths, 17 and a half times a day, and you have to do the mindful work, like that in and of itself is telling me that you have something going on underneath of the surface that needs to be addressed. It's like, it's not that it doesn't work. It is helpful, but you're working 10 times harder to find that regulated state than you should have to, because you're not dealing with the stuff underneath of the surface. And so I am in that mindset world. I believe in it as a coach, but there is a level of, well, how often are you needing to use your tools just to get through the day? Let's talk about that too. And even with like in the pregnancy space, there's hypnobirthing and there's all these amazing things. But if you have to find yourself constantly putting yourself back into a state of meditation to get through the day and feel relaxed, that in and of itself is an issue. And we just are saying we want to get to the point where you can get through your day. And sure, meditation can add to it, but it shouldn't be what's getting you through the day.
Yes. And the reason for that is anatomical, physiological, right? So if you're operating in fight or flight, your brain is literally pulled into this like primal operating mode, and it's hard for your systems to reach your emotional processing centers, executive function, those kinds of things, right? So we have to get this body out of this stuck fight or flight state, so that when you do these meditations or cognitive therapy, you can actually reach those areas and sort it all out, right? So there's that. Yes. And then also, not all moms are going to feel like they're emotionally stressed, right? That's not necessarily a warning sign. What I see super common is really terrible sleep when they're pregnant, like not because they're uncomfortable yet, because they don't even have to be showing. Their sleep just got wrecked as soon as they got pregnant. And then acid reflux, indigestion, heartburn, that those two things show up all the time with my mamas who are stressed. Like your rest and digest. Bam, those two parasympathetic brake pedal functions go out the window. Right.
I'm just super glad you hit on that because it's so true. Like I see some moms who are like, what are you talking about? I'm not stressed. And I would argue those are the ones that are stressed the most because those are the ones. I mean, if we talk about like, you know, the different kinds of stress. I mean, we would talk about the 3 T's, but like the different responses to stress, right? You have your fight response, you have your flight response, you have your freeze response, and then you have your fawn response, right? So it's like what we think of as like I'm super stressed is probably fight or flight, right? Because it's like you're either wanting to run away from it or you're snapping or you're irritable. Like those are nervous system responses, but you also have the people pleasing. You have the people who completely dissociate and think that they're fine because they are not addressing the issue, and we know that they are just really just avoiding, right? They're in avoidance, right? And so those people are typically the ones who are like, I'm fine, when really you're just in a state of avoidance, but your body knows the truth, right? Your body keeps the score and it is holding on to the stress for you because you are not processing it. So I would argue the ones who feel like they are experiencing the least amount of stress are the ones who are experiencing the most because they're not allowing their body to process and integrate what is going on. And so I think what Dr. Serena hit on was really, really an important thing to keep in mind because you don't always see it. And you might be avoiding it. And those probably are the ones that probably look like the random cases of preeclampsia because they didn't even know themselves that they were struggling, but their body was showing signs the whole time.
Yeah. So if you're pregnant, if you're planning to be pregnant, or you know someone who is, click the link in our bio, Vessel Chiropractic in Boise, Idaho. I wanted to just call your practice something completely different, but it's Haven Health Chiropractic in Ankeny. Did I say that right? Ankeny. Iowa. Idaho and Iowa. Here we are. And then also look up PX Docs for a directory if you're not anywhere close to us. There are lots of chiropractors practicing nervous system focused care to repair those automatic functions and get your brake pedal working. Or get your gas pedal back on if you need that back on too, right? So
yeah. And I also I know we're like closing up, but just to empower that mama who does, because that was me in my last pregnancy. For some reason, my first pregnancy, I was like, my body can do all things. I am so ready for this baby. Like a hospital birth wasn't even something, I guess I had a home birth, but like a hospital birth wasn't even something I was worried about. But the second time around, I was kind of like, could I be sick? Like, could something happen? Could we have and I just felt like I was in a state of just worry, probably because I needed adjusted. But for that second, I needed a care plan. I was getting adjusted for my second pregnancy, and it felt like I just didn't have the power to control that. And really, if I had heard these words, I probably would have felt better, knowing that there's something you could do about it, and knowing that you have more control in the situation than you think you do. And then if you are getting adjusted and something happens, your body's adaptable, right? You've been preparing it for whatever. So not to say that it's always going to be perfect, but it will only help you to get adjusted so that you can be adaptable for whatever comes next, come hell or high water.
Would you like to pray us out?
Sure. Dear Lord, thank you so much for your just wisdom and ability to encourage and empower and support women who are bringing new life into the world. We know that this is such a sacred and special time for them. And so we just pray that this lands into the minds and hearts of the right person who needs to hear it, and they are able to come in and get adjusted and get scanned so that we can kind of help them support their family and just create more ease and regulation in not just mom, but baby and their entire family as well. We thank you for this gift. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us on Motherhood Aligned and Assigned.
We hope today's episode helped you connect the dots in your family's health journey.
Remember, this is where nervous system health meets motherhood wisdom.
Until next time, we're Dr. Veronica Schiltz
and Dr. Serena Coffman, supporting you as you nurture your family's well-being.
Because when you're aligned, everyone thrives.